Hi, this is Ali from qualityspectrum.com, and today I'm going to talk about using precise language when talking about anything, specifically in our case, testing. And I've seen this theme that because of the usage of words which are ambiguous or might allude to different meanings, they are interpreted differently by different people, and that leads to further problems. Also, in generally, when using sophisticated language, it's important to use or refer to ideas which are consistent with in letter and spirit, let's say, of the words that you are using. Sometimes when we speak or communicate using fuzzy language, guess what? The receiver of the message gets a fuzzy understanding of what's being talked about. I picked up this phrase from Michael Bolton, and he says that me speak clearly, me think clearly. And naturally, I see that a lot of common terms that since we don't probably, the term itself, the words do not describe accurately what the actual phenomenon or the concept is, and that's why it create people go into a lot of debate or have a lot of problems understanding it. So I'm going to share a few of the terms that I've come across, and there this is certainly a few of the words that I've seen, and there could be a lot more that you could probably add to the list. So the first one, the most hot and common word is test automation. Now, for a very long time, I also used to call it test automation. And with time, after thanks to the rapid software testing RST community, James Black, Michael Bolton, and all those guys, I've started to learn to refrain from using the word test automation. Now, into the going again into the term. Now, what does it mean by test automation? So I understand that it alludes to the meaning that we are automating testing, which is not exactly what's happening. We don't automate testing. Because the process of testing is where we think about what to test and how to test it. When we've done this part, it's just a matter of performing that, which at that point really becomes just checking what I decided about what to test, and then I just check it. So the term test automation suggests that the process of thinking about what should be tested and how it should be tested is getting automated, which is absolutely not the case. So that's why I feel, and it's a very, they have a very good point there, not to use the term test automation. Instead, a few alternatives that I've seen are probably automation in test, which suggests again that there's a lot of thing in testing, and one of a testing aspect is automation. Or then some of them, or I've seen some folks talk about, call it just checking or check automation. So it can be any term that you use, but again, I feel that whatever term you use should be consistent with what the underlying concept is. A similar phrase is manual testing. Now, again, manual testing alludes to that there is one type of testing which is manual, and then there is another type of testing which would be automated, the opposite of manual, right? Which is again not the case. So saying manual testing has this, underlying assumption that there is an automated testing as well, and hence I feel that using this term also is, goes counter, is not in not truly representing what the concept is, because the process of testing has to be done by a human being. We are not at that point where that could be, or I don't know if we will never ever be able to automate that part of it. It would always be a human who is intelligently deciding as to what has to be, what we should test and how to test it, and ask questions. Well, that's a going into the philosophy of testing would be a whole separate debate here, but just it would suffice to say that manual testing is not in alignment with what the underlying concept is. So alternate terms might be just calling them testers or just testing. I think just testers would be a better term. And in contrast, you could call automation engineers and testers. That could be a good term to use. SDEX is a common one. Software developers in test, and that term, I for some reason I am not very happy with, because again it makes me feel that the term is trying to says that there's a developer who is helping with testing, which alludes to the concept that a tester should not be technical or isn't technical, and they need a developer to be in test to solve this. So traditionally we've just synonymously assigned the word tester is synonymous with non-technical, and the word developer is synonymous with being technical, which I feel from the very start was a wrong approach, right? And that's what probably that term alludes to, which is why I don't usually like the term SDEP. But again, that's a personal preference. The next term is framework. So I've seen the term framework used for describing, so they'd call any tool or library even a framework. So a framework is different from what a library is or a tool is. So you cannot call Selenium a framework. TestNG is not a framework. It is a library. And so you'd see these words library, tool, dependency, and framework used interchangeably, which I feel is absolutely wrong. A framework, imagine framework like being something like .NET. .NET is a framework. So does .NET feel something synonymous to TestNG perhaps, or JUnit? Absolutely not. So what is a framework? A framework is actually a collection of tools, libraries, and frameworks, all of them, or tools, libraries, and dependencies, which you use to solve problems for a specific product which has its own design patterns. For instance, let's talk about .NET. .NET has its own design patterns of how to use it. It has its own rules of how to use it. It dictates the control flow for the most part. It uses a lot of different libraries and frameworks within that, libraries and tools within that. So that's why you would call it a framework. I did write a blog post about this. I'll add the link in the description below from where you can read more on the topic. So the last term is end-to-end testing. So end-to-end could mean as is commonly understood, the complete a user's journey across one complete use case. So you would say use case A of a user starting from entering data into or finding a product and then adding it to the cart and then checking out, doing the payment, and so on and so forth. And another meaning of end-to-end could be that you're testing from the technology stacks point of view. You're starting from the UI level, and the control flow, whatever, or the information is being tested, going down the API level, the backend, and into the DB, and then it's coming back up again. So end to end could be, it could be many things. The ends here can be subjective. So That's a term that usually I find context. It could be very contextual, and I usually try to refrain from just using the term end to end at all, because it can have very different meanings. Also, in some cases, whenever people talk about end to end automation, they mean just UI automation. So if end to end really means, going from use case step A to Z, then to test that use case, you don't have to just do it from the UI level. You could, it could be broken down into UI, API, and DB level as well, or unit tests. So it end to end generally is an ambiguous term, and I'd usually prefer to use something very specific to the current context that you are talking about. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, add them in the comments below. If you find this video useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to join us in redefining software quality. See you next time.